I never believed in rituals. To me, urban legends were just stories people made up to scare each other online. But one night, after reading about the elevator game, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was just that little voice daring me to push the boundary between reality and myth. The rules were simple enough. Find a building with at least 10 floors. Follow a strange sequence of buttons, and if you're brave enough, you'll step into another world. People swore they'd seen things: empty cities, endless darkness, and worst of all, her, the woman on the 5th floor. I told myself it was all nonsense. Still, as I walked into that cold, flickering elevator, a chill ran down my spine. My finger hovered over the button, and that's when I knew there was no turning back. I'd always rolled my eyes at ghost stories and so-called paranormal games. Bloody Mary, Ouija boards, calling some spirit at midnight hit, all felt like kid stuff. But the elevator game was different. There was something about the rules, the precision, the way people described it as a doorway to another world. It didn't sound like just a prank. It sounded like a ritual. I first stumbled across it on an obscure forum late at night. A thread buried under pages of creepypasta, where anonymous users shared their experiences. Most of them were laughable teenagers pretending they'd entered some shadow dimension, or people posting blurry elevator photos. But a few stories were different. Their details matched. The way they described the silence on the 10th floor, the way they said their phones stopped working, the warnings about the woman. It got under my skin. The rules were etched into my mind after reading them over and over again. Find a building with at least 10 floors. Enter the elevator alone. Press the sequence, exactly. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5. On the 5th floor, a woman might enter. Don't look at her. Don't speak to her. If you make it to the 10th, you can step into a world just like ours, but empty, silent, different. Everyone online warned against trying it. It's dangerous. You might not come back. Don't mess with things you don't understand. But of course, those warnings worked the opposite way. They made me curious. They made me want to prove it was nothing more than an internet myth. I started scouting places in my city. Most high-rise elevators were too busy, always people getting on and off. The rules were strict. You had to be completely alone, no interruptions. Otherwise, the game wouldn't work. That made it harder than I thought. Then I found it. An old apartment building on the edge of town, mostly abandoned. Rumor was the place was being prepped for demolition. I drove by during the day first, scoping it out. The walls were stained with age, the windows broken, graffiti sprayed across doors. But the elevator was still there, hidden behind rusted metal doors that screeched when they slid open. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something. The air was heavy. The light flickered, buzzing faintly overhead. The buttons were scratched, their numbers half faded, but still recognizable. 10 floors, just enough. I told myself I'd come back at night. Somehow, the thought of doing it in daylight didn't feel right. Rituals like this weren't meant for sunny afternoons. They were meant for silence, for darkness. So I waited. That night, I drove out again, the streets empty and quiet. My heart hammered in my chest as I walked through the building's crumbling lobby. The smell of mold and dust filled my lungs. Every step echoed. By the time I reached the elevator, my palms were already sweating. I stood there for a while, staring at the scratched metal doors. 1,000 little thoughts ran through my mind. What if something really did happen? What if those people online weren't lying? What if the woman really appeared? But I couldn't stop now. When the doors finally groaned open, the air inside felt colder, like stepping into a freezer. I hit the closed door button, and the metal slammed shut, sealing me in. My reflection in the dull metal walls looked pale, my eyes too wide. I could hear my own breathing echoing in the silence. I raised my hand to the panel. My finger hovered over the first button in the sequence. I tried to steady my breathing. "It's just a game," I whispered to myself. "Just buttons, nothing more." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. I pressed the first button 4. The elevator jolted, groaning as it began to move. My stomach twisted the way it always does when an elevator starts. But this time it felt heavier, like something invisible pressed against my chest. I kept my eyes on the dim numbers above the door as they flickered 2, 3, 4. The car slowed, then rattled to a stop. The doors slid open with a metallic screech. The 4th floor was dark, lit only by a single flickering bulb in the hallway. The air looked thick, like dust was hanging in it, unmoving. No sound, no people, just emptiness. My throat tightened. I forced myself not to step out. Instead, I jabbed the next button too. The elevator lurched back down, groaning louder this time, like it resented me. My reflection in the dull metal wall looked stretched, warped, as though the shadows clung tighter to my face. I tried to shake it off, just my nerves, just the bad lighting. The doors opened on the 2nd floor. Silence. A long hallway stretched, outlined with peeling wallpaper. I thought I saw movement far at the end, a shadow shifting, but when I blinked, it was gone. My pulse spiked. I stabbed the next number 6. The ride upward felt slower. The buzzing light overhead flickered harder, humming in a high pitch that made my teeth ache. The walls seemed to creak, as though the elevator wasn't carrying just me anymore. When the doors opened at the 6th floor, my mouth went dry. The hallway was different here, wider, darker, almost like the building had changed. I swore the air smelled faintly metallic, like blood. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to peek. That's when I noticed that every door on that floor was wide open, black yawning gaps instead of rooms, like mouths waiting. A wave of nausea hit me. I slammed Thechu again, dragging the elevator back down. The descent was fast, too fast. My stomach lurched as if gravity had doubled. When the doors opened again at the 2nd floor, the hallway looked the same, but the silence pressed harder. My hand trembled as I reached for the next number. 10. The ride upward felt endless. I gripped the rail behind me, the metal cold against my palms. I kept telling myself it was just an old elevator. That's why it shook. That's why the lights buzzed. But something inside me whispered otherwise, that with each button, I was peeling away from the world I knew. Finally, the numbers ticked to 10. The elevator slowed. The doors shuddered. They opened. The 10th floor stretched out, but it wasn't like any hallway I'd seen before. The air was thick, almost gray, as if fog had seeped inside the building. The walls looked cracked, melted somehow, their edges blurred, and in the distance, nothing. No sound, no people, just endless stillness. I swallowed hard, my finger hovering over the final button in the sequence 5. That was when I felt it, the cold, creeping dread of what was waiting for me there. The elevator rattled as it crawled downward toward the 5th floor. My chest tightened with each flicker of the overhead light. I already knew the stories everyone did. The 5th floor was the one that mattered. That was where she could appear. I tried to steady my breathing, but my lungs felt locked, like something invisible squeezed them. My hand hovered near the panel, ready to hit close door the instant they opened. A voice in the back of my head kept repeating the warning I had read so many times. Don't look at her. Don't speak to her. The elevator slowed. My ears popped like the air pressure had shifted. Then, with a groan, the doors began to slide apart. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dim and colorless. The fluorescent bulb overhead buzzed, like a trapped insect. My heart slammed in my chest. At first, I thought the floor was empty, and then she stepped inside. The click of her shoes echoed on the cracked tile before I saw her. She moved slowly, deliberately, as if she'd been waiting. My skin prickled the instant I realized she wasn't walking in from the hallway, She was just there, at the threshold, as if she'd materialized the moment the doors opened. She looked wrong. Her figure was human, yes, shoulders, arms, long black hair spilling forward to hide most of her face. But her movements didn't match. They were stilted, jerky, like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. She wore something pale, maybe a dress, though the flickering light made it impossible to see clearly. She stepped inside it, kept my eyes locked on the elevator panel, my whole body rigid. I didn't dare look at her directly. Still, I could feel her presence, cold and heavy, as if the small space had shrunk around us. The air thickened, harder to breathe. A faint smell, sweet and rotting at the same time, curled into my nostrils. The doors closed. She stood just behind me. I didn't have to see her to know. My neck tingled, every nerve screaming that her eyes were on me, even if her face was hidden. The silence was unbearable. And then, the worst thing happened. She spoke. It was a whisper, low and cracked, as though her voice had been dragged across broken glass. "Where are you going?" My stomach lurched. The rules screamed in my head. Don't answer. Don't acknowledge her. I clenched my fists at my sides, refusing to move, refusing to speak. My tongue felt like stone in my mouth. The elevator creaked upward, toward the 10th floor. Each second stretched like an eternity. I could hear her breathing now, shallow and ragged, right behind my ear. The sound made bile rise in my throat. The numbers ticked up. 7, 8, 9. Just one more. The light above flickered violently, the whole car shuddering as if it might fall apart. And then at last the elevator slowed. Ding. The doors slid open onto the 10th floor. I didn't know what was worse. The endless silence waiting out there, or the certainty that she was still behind me, waiting for me to make a mistake. The doors yawned open, and for a moment I thought I'd gone blind. The hallway outside looked almost identical to the 10th floor I'd seen earlier, but drained of life, like someone had stripped all the color from the world. The walls were gray, peeling, but not with graffiti or stains. Instead, they looked scorched, as though fire had licked across them long ago. A heavy haze hung in the air, thick and unnatural, making the end of the hallway vanish into shadows. I froze at the threshold. The rules whispered in my mind. If you reach the 10th floor, you may step into another world. A world like ours, but not ours. My breath fogged in the cold air. I glanced at the panel. The button for 10 still glowed faintly red, humming as if it pulsed with life. Behind me, she still stood. I didn't dare turn, but I felt her there, silent now, though her presence clung to my skin like static. My chest tightened. If I stepped out, I'd be exposed. If I stayed, I'd be trapped with her. The silence of that floor was crushing, not just the absence of sound, but the absence of everything. No distant traffic, no humming pipes, no faint breeze, just nothing. Like the world itself was holding its breath. I leaned slightly forward, peering into the hallway. My stomach flipped when I realized what was missing. There were no lights, no fixtures on the ceiling, yet the space glowed faintly, as though the walls themselves bled a dim, gray radiance. I should have gone back. I knew I should have slammed the button sequence in reverse and ended it. But curiosity burned hotter than fear. I needed to know. I stepped out. The moment my foot touched the ground, a jolt shot up my leg, like the floor itself was rejecting me. My ears rang with a low hum, and the elevator behind me groaned, as though it disapproved. The hallway stretched impossibly long now, farther than it had any right to. I took another step, my shoes echoing sharply against the silence. Each sound felt too loud, swallowed instantly by the air. Then it hit me. There were no doors. Where before, apartments had lined the walls, there was now only endless, cracked concrete. No signs of life, no escape. I turned, heart pounding. The elevator doors remained open, the light inside flickering. She was still in there. I couldn't see her face, but her silhouette stood stiff and unmoving, like a shadow waiting for me to return. Something in me screamed to run, to get back inside, to hit the sequence in reverse before I was stranded here. But another part, the part that dragged me into this mess, kept whispering, "Go further, see what lies ahead." I took one more step into that endless, hollow corridor, and then the elevator doors slammed shut. The sound boomed like a gunshot. In the silence, I was alone. The silence pressed in on me like a weight. I stared at the closed elevator doors, willing them to open again. My finger jabbed at the call button on the wall, except there was no button, no panel, no sign the elevator had ever existed. Just smooth, cracked concrete. My chest tightened, panic crawling up my throat. No, this isn't right. The elevator was right here. I pounded the wall, the sound echoing down the endless corridor, swallowed quickly by the heavy air. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft at first, almost like the sound was coming from inside my skull. Then louder, heavier, the unmistakable rhythm of someone walking behind me. I froze. My blood went cold. I had walked maybe 10 steps into this place, but I hadn't heard anyone follow. The rules screamed through my mind again. Do not look at her. Do not acknowledge her. But these footsteps, they weren't coming from the elevator. They were behind me, out in the corridor. Slow, deliberate, dragging slightly, like someone's bare feet across concrete. I forced myself to move forward. One step, then another. The corridor stretched, warping in my vision, like it would never end. Yet the footsteps followed, always the same distance behind. Never closer, never farther. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Relief surged through me as I yanked it out, but the screen was wrong. The battery icon was scrambled, the time flashing numbers that made no sense. The footsteps stopped. The silence was worse. Every nerve in my body screamed to turn around, to see what stood behind me. But I gritted my teeth, my eyes locked ahead. My breathing grew ragged, loud in my ears. My vision swam. Then the air changed. The hallway darkened, shadows lengthening unnaturally. The walls seemed to ripple like liquid, and in the faint gray glow ahead, I saw it a door. Just one, crooked wooden, with a rusted handle. I sprinted for it. The footsteps exploded behind me, pounding faster now, closing the gap. My legs burned as I slammed into the door and tore it open. Inside was the elevator. Relief surged through me so hard, I nearly collapsed. The same dull metal walls, the flickering light overhead. The panel of buttons waited, glowing faintly. I stumbled in, slamming the closed door button until the metal sealed shut. My chest heaved, my throat ached, but the instant the elevator began to move, I knew something was wrong. The reflection in the metal walls wasn't mine. I gasped, stepping closer. My reflection smiled back at me, wide and unnatural, lips peeling, to reveal teeth to sharp. Its eyes were black pits, endless and hungry, and as the elevator climbed, my reflection leaned forward and whispered, though my own lips never moved. You didn't follow the rules. The lights flickered once, twice, then everything went dark. I don't remember how long the darkness lasted. When the lights flickered back on, the elevator doors opened to my building's lobby, safe, normal. People walked past me, chatting, carrying groceries, living their lives like nothing had happened. But when I glanced at the mirrored panel again, the reflection that stared back still wasn't mine. Maybe I made it back. Maybe I didn't. That's the danger of the elevator game. Once you play, you can never be sure if the world you've returned to is really yours. Would you dare to press those buttons? Or do you think this is just another urban legend, a trick of the mind? Let me know what you believe in the comments below. And if you crave more terrifying tales of the unknown, subscribe to Dark Deck Chronicles, where every story pulls you deeper into the shadows.